just creating all this pain and, you know, suffering again, creating the insane clown posse who come out, you know, this Dunnett crowd, you know, Ron Logan. I knew it too. I knew it, Linda, I knew it. Okay, so, you know, these people, how can I move forward with this a little bit? Just, I'm going to run out of time probably, but, okay, so pork chop. Let's just go to the pork chop. This is a piece of imagery messed with from the image of the BG, which has been superimposed over David McCain by Halfmeister. And, you know, above Shane Evans, David McCain was there, and he was there at that time. Was he walking away from the crime scene when he encountered Derek German, Libby's father? Okay, so David McCain, there's this, I don't know if it's official, there's talk that Dan McCain's in the cemetery with a walkie-talkie, David McCain is on the trails with a walkie-talkie. So I made my video, the McCain sandwich, right? Because in between there is the scene where the girls were left, the site. And people like to bring in that there's a conspiracy about the trails getting money, etc. Well, these guys, they do want money for the trails. They do want to save Delphi. Will they go to those sort of ends? Well, maybe because they're both quite old and, you know, they've got to be a bit more aggressive to make sure that they, you know, secure their legacy, family legacy, before they leave this green earth. Okay, how do those conversations go? But anyway, okay, so they are on the radar of true crime population anyway. And Ron Logan is the man whose land it was on. Now, there's a superficial resemblance to Bridge Guy. He is too tall. He doesn't have the reddish brown hair we're supposed to be looking at, and he is supposedly quite a lot older. But I guess both Ron Logan and David McCain could have been someone that was seen on the trails that day. Ron Logan might go out for these big walks and over the bridge and back to his property. It's interesting that the alibi that he got his cousin to give is for the time before the girls would have been walking onto the, you know, it's around the time of the 2:30 time, right? It's an interesting time frame because you'd think you'd want to have extended that to 4 o'clock or something like that. Do I think he was out walking on that side of the bridge, you know, on the north side of the bridge or anywhere that day? No. Yeah, he wears a hat and he wears a coat, right? He's a country guy. This is how they dress out there. There's a lot of people that dress like that. I mean, the shape of his hat's interesting. He wears a badge on it that some people say is a camera, but I think it's, I don't know. But, you know, he's quite tall. He was 6'2", and Bridge Guy supposedly isn't that tall, although we're considering declines for it. The thing is, we don't think Keegan's as tall as his father, and, you know, so could Keegan be actually 5'11" and not 6 foot or something, and could that stretch to the frame of 5'6" to 5'10"? Ron Logan's legs don't look right, you know, but, you know, he walks along with his hands in his pockets. He was 77 years old at the time, but, you know, his alibi doesn't quite fit the frame. You know, the guy's drunk and he was drinking and driving, and this creates a danger for the community. A drunk driver can damage property, murder children, damage other vehicles, kill themselves. They're a liability. And Ron was coming up to a month. You know, he had a month before he finished his probation and could drive again. He goes to the transfer station. could he have been immediately disposing of something from the crime scene? Sure. Okay. Could he be worried that he's going to get blamed? Because he was, right? Yes. He could be worried he's going to get blamed. This is why he came up with the alibi, maybe. I don't know. And because he learned on the night of the 13th that, people were out looking for these girls, right? So before they're found, he's giving an alibi. But, he drives around. I think he's driven out actually to Frankfurt. There's a receipt from Frankfurt. It would be easy to ask staff very quickly. They'd remember. He's quite a rememberable gentleman, even though many of them dress this way. Hey, did he actually come in and buy these fish? Who knows where he was in between that? Probably drinking. And probably drinking at home. He probably might even have been on his land during the murders. Maybe that's when he was at the refuse station, the transfer station, during the murders, because the breeze was blowing up towards his property away from the bridge. Gunshot might have been heard by him, but not on the bridge, which is closer. But, Ron Logan had his property searched. They got search warrants so that if something did have to go to court, it wasn't going to be dismissed. So, when you're writing these search warrants, you've got to give probable cause. We know this, right? From if you've been following many cases, if you've been following Morphew case, for example. Anywho. So, that's Ron Logan. And people are getting their knickers in a twist over him again from information that's 5 years old and hasn't told us anything new. Okay, it hasn't. Mentioned McCain. And when you're talking dynasties, you see, I guess this might be why people do disparage Delphi and call it the village of the damned, because on one hand, you've got these dynasties that have tried to build things up for the community for a number of decades or over, centuries, really, maybe since, 1885 or whatever it is. Anyway, and that's one type of dynasty. And then you've got families that have generations of abuse, of felons, of drug abusers, and that type of thing, right? And so this is sort of a class thing, really, or anyone can be. What I mean is a status thing in Delphi nearly, because not class. Anyone is affected by drugs and alcohol. Anyone can commit crime. How they might be caught and punished, etc., can be different things. But, I mean to say there is this dichotomy there, right? Like there is everywhere. And, it's awful thinking about how many, codgers are around Delphi. It's like any area that's struggling to survive and to entertain its children and keep them engaged. And, Delphi's making the effort with sports and this Purdue University nearby where high school students can go and be, inspired. Like Libby was inspired to go into sciences and she was taking classes at Purdue. And, these things do try to keep youth off the street. And there's burger joints and things like that. And there's the nature activities, right? But still, there is a meth problem in Delphi, like there is all throughout the world in various areas, okay? And, there are families that, just are plagued with broken relationships and, damaged families, people who've gone to prison, and that sort of thing. And it does juxtapose against people who, maybe are committing criminal acts of their own when they're wheeling and dealing or whatever, right? Look, Ron Logan's property was negatively geared. Was there a takeover of his land during the time that he was locked up in prison in the years just before his death? No. negative gearing mortgages mean that you have to be occupying your land that you've got the mortgage on. So, the conspiracy that maybe if they get him in prison, if they couldn't get him for the murders, they'll get him for, they just had to catch him drunk driving, right? Do you see how insane this is? Who says, let's kill some girls and we'll get Ron Logan's land that way? It's the offer you can't refuse, as I've said before. How do you bring that up? And then if you don't go along with it, or if you can't be trusted, then, well, you might be the body under the bridge. So is there a conspiracy? Maybe someone got Ron Logan off the land, right? We don't know that. Just to get a bit more privacy. It could be someone that all these people know. This is what law enforcement are trying to get at. I don't know how much time I've got left to record. So quickly, Derek German goes to the trail. So he's going there to pick up Libby and Abby. Do we presume he went to where Mears is and went in that way and saw McCain somewhere around the trails there, either north or south of Mears? And he asks David McCain, apparently, I can't remember whose testimony this is, but I think it might have been Michael Catt, who interviewed who they at first called flannel shirt guy. They didn't know it was McCain. They found out who he was, who said that, he said, the description of the young girls wasn't who I saw down at the bridge. Derek, instead of thinking, well, it's only a few minutes this way, I'll go to the bridge, because that's where they were heading. I'll go and see if they, fallen off, they're just stranded, something's happened, are they just mucking around? He didn't go to the actual Monon High Bridge immediately. This drives me bananas. Is this guy just meth-head brain fried? Is he just, this is the guy that doesn't have guardianship of his family. Why is he charged with picking them up? Why is he even living in the house? I think he's remarried and he's got someone else living in the house with him, his new wife. There's a constant flow of people through this house that the Patties are supporting above and, over Libby and Kelsey sort of thing, right? Because, they're worrying about Cody Patty and keeping Derek German occupied. He couldn't work for anyone else, so he worked for Becky, and he was up in Frankfurt taking photos apparently, and he can't have a license from what I understand. So why is he driving? So why is he not in jail? But you can put an old man like Ron Logan at the end of his life in jail, right? The way to look at that is and go, okay, well, they had to, was because, look, this guy's a menace. 2 weeks after the murders, he was probably he was upset about what happened, like many people were, like Shane Evans was. He was somewhere drinking and driving, and it's like there's multiple offences that let him off for the day of driving to the tip, and then his alibi was that someone else drove him as far as Frankfurt to get some fish. But, he's doing it again. So, he's a menace, and so they had to do it. But, Derek German, you're a menace as well if you're driving without a license, right? So he's gone there to pick the girls up, and he hasn't gone to the actual bridge. Maybe, I think he walks back down first to the Freedom Bridge car park. I don't think he went as far as the whole 1.5 miles down to the city or something, although I nearly would have gone, after looking at the bridge and on the 501 and the 505 trail and at Freedom Bridge, I would have quickly driven into town and gone to that City Park and Riley Park area where the swing bridges and where there's all this stuff going on, and where probably there are other children, the older naughty ones might be going up to the Monon Trail, or maybe families that just want to get out of town, who knows. Again, Harvey Carroll will tell you that there were 70 people identified on the trail. Okay, certain people are not one of them, right? Ron Logan isn't one of them, right? Anyway, so, and you know, Evan's the most tracked person in town because he's the mayor of Delphi at the time. Don't think he was on the trails as well. There are other ways you can do it other than just throwing a line in a video saying he didn't file an activity report for that month. And then it goes straight to this, you know, that annual meeting of blah, 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 right? Okay. People are actually manipulating your minds because it makes exciting content. It's exciting. It's interesting. They're warping your minds to elevate their status, you know. So I guess this is what we do here on YouTube, right? People are making videos and they're putting forward theories, and they will present it in such a way as people just take everything they say on board, okay? Who else should we quickly talk about while I might have a minute? So, you know, Derek German, and he's looking around, and then, you know, he's getting on the phone to Becky and stuff, and it's Becky that calls, as we were talking before, the police at 5:30, and you know, it is interesting that there is this quick response, but I guess, you know, the sheriff, etc., they're having a look around first, and people start calling people and calling people, and there's a search party out there, and you know, once the fire service is involved, the fire service that I think Mike Petty worked for, amongst other things, property owner, and you know, this is the funny thing, you know, and people, I've heard people say, oh, you know, they're so poor, they're you know, the Pattys aren't poor. They own property, they run businesses, they hold jobs. They're not poor by any mean, but there is this problem though, right, in their family. So we won't even talk about Kelsey, you know. I mean, what should we, sorry. You know, it's funny because, did I tell you about the duffel bag? Right, so on the 22nd of February in the press conference, shoulder to shoulder, you know, okay, there's a guy that went out and he blew the bullhorn out there, right? I can't remember his name. It'll come to me as soon as I hang up here, but people talk about him as maybe being someone that possibly reported seeing someone leave a bag. But I think what Carter is getting at when he's asking, did you see someone hitching along Hoosier Heartland? You know, did you see someone walking along or hitching Hoosier Heartland and it just looked out of place to you? I think they're just asking this because the Hoosier Heartland is right there, that highway, that's an obvious means of escape, right? And, you know, just like we've got the vehicle that was seen, they're looking for the driver of a vehicle parked at, you know, the abandoned CPS building, which is opposite Anderson's, so northeast. Maybe they think, did he hitch out because he didn't come back for his car? But the car apparently was there from 12 to 5. A security camera on Anderson's can look across and see this vehicle, and there's satellite imagery as well, I think. You know, did he come out down here, walk up the highway and cross back over to Anderson's? You know, did he not walk around the east side and up? Whose car was this, right? Is it anything to do with the crime at all? Did someone just not really know how to park to go to the trails? Because there's other, you know, I don't know, right? It is a mystery. It could be connected, it could not be. But I don't know that there was necessarily an actual sighting of someone with a duffel bag. We can assume maybe if they've you know, they're trying to walk out of there. They've got to carry things and something. They might have wanted to change their shoes, which might have blood on them, or take a jacket off, change their appearance somehow for getting out of there. You know, I wondered, did Libby have a bag? Is this one of the things that the family know that they've been told don't tell? You know, did Libby have a bag, and was that taken? And that's what he used to put clothes in. Is this why they say, did you see, you know, someone carrying a bag, a duffel bag maybe, someone looking out of place? I don't know that necessarily there was a sighting. I mean, would Libby and Abby have wanted to take a few things with them, like a drink bottle? It's not talked about, right? You know, something to put their phones in, and their, you know, I don't know. They might not have wanted. I don't see Abby carrying a phone, and yet apparently she had one given to her by the Patties. I don't know if this is true or not, but she might not have wanted to carry it across a bridge in case she dropped it, and maybe Abby was carrying it for her and put it in this bag that's missing. I feel like we should have seen more of the video. I don't think it shows anything of the crime scene. I don't know why it's withheld, but the strange trickling out of information, you know, the older looking sketch, the younger looking sketch, you know, we're told constantly how complex it is. It is complex. But, you know, it's very confusing. Initially, they said, look, it's more likely than not that the killer knew they were going to be there. That's how it was worded, okay? Not that, oh, he knew the girls or something. That the killer knew they were going to be there. But, you know, they didn't rule off the possibility that it's just someone, that it was a random attack, you know? If it's a random attack, the person, you know, it's just, they're long gone, aren't they? And that's what makes these cases hard to solve. But, you know, a lot of people that have a lot of expertise, etc., believe that it's someone that knows the area. Either he's worked there before, lived there before, or might still be connected. But is it someone that, you know, used to work in some of the now defunct industries, like the furniture production industries, you know? Or is it someone that's worked at Packers before? Is it someone, you know, it's just, you know, and how is social media connected? You know, is this how the girls were identified as being there at that time? You know, there's this asshat that's still making videos about, well, he's sort of tried to, he's withdrawn a little bit about Kat's involvement, rest in peace, he says. But he's still going hard at Greeno and, you know, saying, look at them talking about how why were they having to stand behind a tree and go under the bridge? Well, they went there to do a thorough job as they could, documenting the area. They stood at, you know, on north side, you know, hiding there so that to see what would it be like to watch the trails north and to know who's south of you on the bridge. He's got these girls isolated. You know, he was hiding and then he's come out. You know, they were filming themselves hiding behind various trees, different angles under the bridge at different ends. Greeno walked through the water to see what that felt like, how deep it was, how his jeans would look when he got out of the water. All of these things, right? It doesn't mean they can't help themselves and they're just, you know, there's leakage about the crime, right? Doesn't matter. I don't care if you're in Sydney or Canada, you're not untouchable, and you must be careful about what you say about people, dead or in prison, all right? Speculation is great, you know, speculation, you can hit on things that you might, you know, that's how you've got to use imagination at times, that you've got to be cautious how you use it. This whole thing is blown up out of proportion, I believe, with Shane Evans and the meetings or his activity report, you know. it hasn't been, it was never quantified or qualified by True Crime Jesus. It's a quick sentence that people know what they're doing, right? Now, where did this information come from? His resource, Carol or something? Who? Okay, follow that up further. That warrants further follow-up. If you think that someone is trying to hide a crime by just not, submitting an activity report, I mean, do you know how much time and energy these things take? But, they're an unfortunate part sometimes of, certain jobs, sales jobs, and bureaucratic jobs, right? But many people could say, okay, well, we can get this done. I can help you. A report could be done up, and there's other information there that can be compiled and understood as what people have been doing, right? So if you want to find out, don't just ring them up and make these kind of crank calls, really, because you're not asking the right question. Maybe as a paid person of office, he has to publish diaries or something, have a diary that's accessible for during the day. There's other people working with him that, if they thought anything was odd or off, he's easily been investigated, right? I'm not saying I think 100%, there's no way you could be involved. It's kind of unlikely, but, sure. But nothing that anyone has shown so far shows Shane as a fact or is good evidence, They're not making a good case for it. Him standing there looking like he's sweating bullets. Not really. And then after that, he's seen acting very casually. It's a tense situation. They're talking about a terrible thing that's happened in his town, kind of on his watch, and it's immense. It's a lot. Even though he's very capable for such a young man, he's been brought up that way, right? Excuse my perspiration. He's been brought up that way. This is something he never, ever, ever expected would be foisted upon him in his capacity as mayor. Oh, unless he's the murderer. So, yeah, he's showing some emotion. He's maybe trying to choke back some emotion. They'll say, oh, he's shaved his beard, he's done this, he's done that. His bed's on and off like bed sheets, okay? Sure, he walks with his hand in his pocket, and so does Ron Logan. So does McCain. There's another more interesting video about, Bridge Guy and the glove. And can you see a hand with this fingerless glove on it? A bow and arrow shooter's glove, a hunter's glove, and that movement. And, and then Mike Patty on stage being hyper aware of not standing with his hands on his pockets or in his pockets, but maybe he doesn't want to be standing there aggressively or looking, that's kind of not a good look, right? You try not to do that in certain formal situations. There's stances that you don't take. Most people, that's why they stand there with their hands behind their back or clasped in front of them. And Mike Patty he doesn't know what to do with his hands. He sort of hangs them down here, Is it the mannerism that Carter's talking about? Or is it just a guy that's awkward? We've got all the people that are saying, this is, all the flashing signals are going on. Every time he talks at CrimeCon, people are doing this. And who knows? Who knows? Yeah, we need it solved. It doesn't matter who it is. So if people of office or status are involved, as much as if it's, a drifter or, a Packers kill floor worker, they went to Packers straight away. Did they take boots to hide that they were taking something else, maybe a knife? Or did they need those boots because blood gets on boots? Why was it one pair of boots? Was it just for comparison's sake, for investigation's sake? What did they take? So, Packers is such an interesting connection. They do hire people they would hire people who are felons or illegals, right? Untraceables. And someone at Packers that's on that side of town, they'd go past the trails every day. Maybe they've explored before and after work. Maybe, people case places. They might come from hundreds of miles away to look at various sites, right? But he got pretty lucky to go there that day. Maybe he's been there so many times before and just hasn't got lucky, right? But, this is part of why they think the killer knew the girls were going there or there, right? That's where maybe catfishing comes in, or who were the girls talking to? Who was talking to the girls? Who was communicating to them? Yeah. There's so many things. And I will just say this. There is a question that Carter asks. Who's next? We're asking this just as much as the killer is. Is the killer there thinking, who's next? Right? And he's, this is when he's urging about that tip line. They introduced the Abby and Libby tip at CACOSHRF.com, tips to go directly to the sheriff. It'll be anonymous. No one will ever know. No one will know. No one will know. Yeah. So, if you're a person that suspects someone, if you're in Delphi or wherever and you do suspect someone and you're just not calling it in, and as Carter says, is it a family member? I mean, he could be saying that about, is the perpetrator a family member, of course, not only speaking from the position of the person that knows something that can help catch him, but you've got to be thinking, who's next, right? There could be further victims. There might have been already. Sure, it could be one-off. Why? That does make people think about motive. Well, nothing seems to have come of it politically or whatever, right? Land-wise, whatever. I mean, what a foul plan. What a cracked plan. I mean, really, to murder two little girls? Oh, yeah, I was going to say about, and, one of the plans connects, the professor from the university, CM, who has the geocaching, who's connected to Kelsey through his geocaching. She seems to have gone to some of his private sites. This again, True Crime Jesus has got videos on this. And Libby and Kelsey used to like geocaching together, and they are around at Freedom Bridge and I think nearer the bridge and throughout town. And that was a really beloved hobby of Kelsey and Libby. And this guy that's into Krampus, drowning little kids, punishing little kids, the folklore figure, the guy CM from Purdue University, may have crossed paths with the Germans there, definitely crossed paths with Kelsey, and just prior to, the geocaching was the 11th. She makes it sound like it was the Sunday, right? But it was the Saturday, the 11th. So, there is rumor that the murder happened the night before, the day before. The conspiracy just gets bigger, doesn't it? Every time something changes, though. But, is there a geocaching connection? Was someone obsessed with Kelsey? He looked a bit like this guy's wife who he's now divorced from. And he seems to have taken up a lot of drinking afterwards and wasn't very active on his geocaching. And yeah, it's pretty bizarre, actually, And has he somehow gotten this technological connection through the geocaching? Did he think Kelsey was going to be there and it turned out to be Libby and Abby? I mean, I don't want to cast aspersions here. I mean, hopefully, as strange as it might seem, this person has been looked into because they've been spoken about and probably tipped in over and over and over and over again, right? Yeah. things happening on land that you care about can just affect you. As I've said, archaeologically, this is very important, a very important place. So, no, it's not the village of the damned. It's a village that has some terribly shitty things happening to it. It's got people that struggle through all types of things in life, and people who are successful in life too, who love the area, who've built something there, who are educated, who are smart, who are driven, and who value the land, value their community, and they hate that this has happened, that 2 young girls have been murdered in their village. It's not the village of the damned, but it is a village under pressure and suffering. It does need its chance to remain a kind of a jewel in Indiana, to be a draw card. It deserves to survive. There's a lot of history there, a lot of people relying on the town, and at least it does have, as horrible as this place is, at least it's got packers sending out millions of tons of dead animal every week. So there are people there that are honing skills and getting numb or damaged because they are killing. They are there with the squealing of the animals. They are looking in the animals' eyes and killing them. And then they are dissecting them. And this has to be considered as a likelihood, likely possibility for where the killer has come from, right? We think a knife is used. Law enforcement were asking around town about certain knives, where they can be bought, but that does make you think, is it more a hunting knife, not a killing knife from packers? Who knows? But we had our female serial killer here who worked abattoirs, and she killed men with knives, right? It happens. And is that what Carter was referring to when he's saying, don't write off your tip because you think that they couldn't do this to another human being? Yeah. So this can be very, very, we're told it's really complex, of course, because there's, maybe because of the site and because of various things, but, and because the town is part of a little cesspit hotbed for, CSAM and things like that, right? Because of the Kleins and, and of course people are going to be connected. This is a small town. There are connections, okay? Names are going to come up over and over again. Yeah. Anyway, this is going to take probably 24 hours to upload because it's 1.27.31 hours. I've really, an hour and 27 minutes. So I've really got to go. This is going to take forever to upload, so I will post something maybe a little short letting you know I'm doing it. And I'll speak to you anon. There's so much more I could talk about. This is the thing, it's hard. You can't, let me just say, Linda, for example, you can't do a deep dive in half an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, okay? You can't deep dive this like that. It's an ongoing thing. It's a long learning process. And sure, there are facts, but doesn't make it evidence. And these are real people, real families, real memories, okay? Let's all remember that. Now, yes, it might turn out to be very shocking. It could be a school friend. It could be the Kleins. It could be someone that Ron Logan knows. It might be someone related to the McCains through their involvement in the town. It could be anybody, okay? But I think